Matt Schaff and Jared Small of DraftSharks.com here to get you ready for your Week 15 waiver wire runs. The focus this week is on running backs, Jared, and we're going to jump right in with the top four guys at the position from our waiver wire pickups article this week. We got Tank Bigsby, we got Sincere McCormick, Patrick Taylor, and Kendre Miller. And rather than just go through each of these guys one by one, Jared, let's kind of sort them out. I think first off, how are you prioritizing this quartet of players? Any single guy that you're most interested in targeting? Are you just like ordering all of them if you're in need of running back? How are you attacking this group this week?
Yeah, I think as always, it depends on what your team needs. Now it's week 15. So I think in most cases, like you're looking for this week, right? Rather than like a long-term stash, because there's not much time left to be stashing these guys for. So if you need a starter this week, Patrick Taylor is my favorite. Now that's with the caveat, of course, that Isaac Guerendo does not play. Luckily, that's a Thursday night game, so we'll know, right? So I think Taylor's worth stashing, because if Guerendo's out, I think Taylor, again, we don't know for sure what the backfield's going to look like, but we said that last week with Guerendo, and he ended up kind of being the clear leader like we thought he would. I think Patrick Taylor will be the clear leader in this backfield on Thursday night if Guerendo's out. Now, there's nothing exciting about Taylor as a player. I won't try to sell anyone on Patrick Taylor, but you're getting a lead back in this running game that you were talking last week, Matt, about how productive it's been across, a ton of different players over Kyle Shanahan's career. We saw that with Guerendo last week. You're getting, the lead back in that running game on a home favorite on a team with a 25.25 point implied total. The matchup's pretty good against the Rams. They're 15th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs. They're actually down at 22nd in run defense DVOA. So it's a pretty good spot for Patrick Taylor. I think you could do worse as like an RB3 flex play if Guerendo does not play on Thursday night.
Agree. I mean, the reaction is, who is Patrick Taylor? But at some point it was like, who is Jeff Wilson Jr.? Who is Matt Breida? Like, there's a reason that Kyle Shanahan keeps a running back around. I'm not saying Patrick Taylor's anything special, but he's been on the team all year. Keyshawn Vaughn just rejoined the team, did not stick with the team after training camp. Other guys have come and gone, including guys that they drafted higher. So there's a reason they kept Patrick Taylor around. I would guess that he will lead the backfield in touches if Isaac Guerendo doesn't play in this game. And, even though we'll find out early, it's Tuesday right now, or maybe it's Wednesday that you're doing your waiver run. We probably won't know for sure by the time your waivers run whether Guerendo's playing. Maybe like by the end of Wednesday and before those waivers run, we'll know that Guerendo's out for Thursday. But either way, I think Taylor is worth picking up. Even if Guerendo plays in this game, that foot sprain adds risk beyond Thursday night. So I think it's at least worth stashing Taylor. And of course, you talked about how what you should go for depends on what you need at this point. And if you don't need a running back either this week or next week, like if you're in pretty good shape where you have three guys that you could start the rest of the way, you don't have to attack any of these players. You might be best off just going after the handcuffs we talked about, and we'll get to that in a minute. Actually, let's get to that right now, because we've been talking about handcuff running backs the past few weeks on this show. I think that's the other consideration here, is not just which of these running backs do I go after, because you could make a case for obviously any of them. That's why they're in our article and in our rundown here. But if I've got two set starters that I know I'm not going to start Sincere McCormick over this week, then I'm way more interested in keeping like Kenneth Gainwell behind my Saquon Barkley on my bench than I am dropping Gainwell for Sincere McCormick, even if I'm looking at, potentially blocking a league mate. If I'm worried about my opponent next week or the week after playing Sincere McCormick against me, I'm either thinking too hard about it, or I don't have that good a team to begin with if Sincere McCormick's going to swing things, the other way.
Yeah, if you're still working the waiver wire, your fantasy team's probably pretty good. It means you're in the playoffs. You probably don't have, a massive hole to fill. So I think in a lot of cases, keeping these high-end handcuffs that we've been talking about stash over these guys is definitely the way to go, unless someone like Patrick Taylor would definitely start for you this week.
Now, if you are in need, like you lost Bucky Irving, or you don't know about Bucky Irving, or you picked up Guerendo to be a solution last week, and now you're not sure, certainly Tank Bigsby, Sincere McCormick makes some sense. Tank Bigsby had not been doing a whole lot for 3 straight weeks for a Jaguars offense that hadn't been doing a whole lot. But this past weekend, 18 carries, 55 yards, touchdown against Tennessee. They've got a remaining schedule that should be somewhat friendly. Jets, Raiders, Titans, all games where the Jags have a chance to not get blown out, have a chance to stick with the run game. And it looks like Tank Bigsby should be back leading that run game. So you can stick him on your bench. Similar with Sincere McCormick, you don't know what the backfield's going to look like for sure once Alexander Mattison and Zamir White get healthy, but Sincere McCormick's way ahead of his teammates in yards per carry at 5.5, in rushing success rate at 62.5%. So the Raiders should keep giving him the ball, at least in the run game. Might lose his modest receiving production to Madison once Madison comes back, but at the very least should keep running the ball, can be somebody that's useful in deeper leagues and in more desperate running back situations.
Yeah, I don't see why the Raiders would go back to Alexander Madison at this point. He is not even signed beyond this year. The Raiders obviously not playing for anything this year, so it makes sense to just continue to see what they have in Sincere McCormick. Beyond this week for the Raiders, they get the Jags and Saints in week 16 and 17. Those teams are 30th and 29th in adjusted points allowed to running back. So again, like, I don't know, if you're in your semifinals, a lot of those teams probably aren't going to need Sincere McCormick, but I think he could land in the top 36 of our running back rankings in those two matchups. And I mean, Tank Bigsby, I would prefer him over Sincere McCormick. I think he's probably a better player. Offenses are maybe pretty similar. The only issue with Bigsby is just it seemed like he was taking over the backfield on multiple occasions this year, and then something happens, either he gets hurt or Doug Peterson decides to go back to Travis Etienne. So I don't fully trust Tank Bigsby is the clear lead ball carrier here yet. He also continues to do very little in the passing game. So that's the downside. But like you said, Matt, the good thing for Bigsby the rest of the way is none of those final three opponents should blow out the Jags. So they should have a chance to stick with the running game, which, has not been the case for Jacksonville for a lot of this season.
Of course, any of the three randomly could, and that's why we're not betting on the Jaguars in general this season. But best guesses at this point. Kendre Miller, it's nice to see him score a touchdown in his first game back onto the field. But he's the number 2 running back for an offense that already stunk and just got stinkier with the quarterback going down.
Yeah, he's pulling me in for next year. I'll be drafting a lot of Kendre Miller again next year, but Miller will need a Kamara injury, I think, to be someone you could really count on in fantasy lineups the rest of this season.
And I'll probably be drafting him less in best ball than I did this year after this experience, but still some for sure. Any other running backs that you're targeting this week?
Yeah, I think Isaiah Davis belongs in this group of 4 we just talked about. That was nearly an even 50-50 split between Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis last week with Breece Hall. So however excited you are about Braylon Allen, I think Davis belongs just behind him. Allen did lead in snaps by a bit. He's probably the better bet if Breece Hall remains out. The Jets supposedly not shutting down Breece Hall with his knee injury. I don't see why they would play him if he's anything less than 100% in this lost season. He is a building block for them going forward. So I'm kind of banking on Breece Hall not playing at least this week. And if that's the case, I think, Isaiah Davis is someone, again, in that Tank Bigsby, Sincere McCormick kind of territory as far as a week 15 fantasy play goes.
I really wish Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis had been drafted by other teams, because either of those guys could be starting for the Cowboys right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Sean Tucker is somebody in the handcuff category that I mentioned before. I would love to stash him right now. Obviously, he had the 2-pronged handcuff setup going for him with either Bucky Irving or Rachaad White potentially giving him opportunity. We saw Bucky Irving not make it through last week's game. We don't know about Bucky Irving for week 15, but the back injury is clearly an issue. So stashing Sean Tucker seems like a good idea right now. Wide receiver, who's your favorite target at that position if you've got a spot to play with or just looking for some insurance, maybe even a week 15 starter?
We highlighted Jalen McMillan in the waiver wire article this week, and he's worth stashing. I think, obviously coming off the 2 touchdown game, also saw 7 targets in that game last week, team high 7 targets. And he's been a full-time player now, and he is a rookie wide receiver who, we kind of liked coming out. Those guys tend to get better late in the season. So maybe McMillan could be helpful the rest of the way. I think, though, in most cases, if you're starting Jalen McMillan in week 15, you're in trouble. So 2 other guys I wanted to mention, I was just kind of looking through our rankings and looking through ownership percentages. Cedric Tillman's now available in 52% of sleeper leagues after he missed the past couple of weeks with his concussion. We'll see if he makes it back this week, but Tillman's a guy we were talking about as, a top 25 fantasy wide receiver before he went down. Maybe he's behind Jerry Jeudy at this point, but I still think Tillman could be a nice wide receiver 3 down the stretch. And then Xavier Legette is available in 50% of sleeper leagues. He has 8 targets in each of his last 2 games now. Bryce Young obviously playing better for Carolina. Legette this week home for Dallas. The Panthers have a 22.25 point implied total. I believe that's their highest of the season. Definitely their highest with Bryce Young. So even Legette, I would prefer over McMillan this week if you're looking for a week 15 starter.
Legette's probably even got a good chance of outscoring what T. Higgins did against the Cowboys on Monday night. Speaking of those Browns, I like Elijah Moore as well. Just 38% rostered on sleeper right now. He's coming off a dud, 3 catches, 34 yards on 4 targets against the Steelers. That's the fewest targets he's seen in a Jameis Winston game. Jared told me last week week to target the Chiefs on defense in the slot. And then we all watched Josh Palmer see his most slot usage of the season with Ladd McConkey out, have his best receiving line of the season against those Chiefs. Elijah Moore's production has been all over the place, which you should expect from a player who has not been very good through his career and a quarterback whose performance fluctuates throughout his career. But Moore has seen 6+ targets in every game that Winston has started and that has not come against Pittsburgh. He is averaging 6.25 receptions per game in the 4 games that Winston started that did not come against the Steelers. So obviously not a safe bet, but a pretty good bet for PPR upside. And that includes potentially using Elijah Moore at like the wide receiver 4 level or, higher if you're in a deeper league.
Yeah, that's a good call. We're going to get 40+ pass attempts out of Jameis Winston again this week as underdog against the Chiefs, who are already a pass funnel defense. So, and like you said, Matt, good matchup for Moore in the slot. So I would prefer Tillman as a starter this week, but I would start Elijah Moore over either McMillan or Xavier Legette.
I wish I could take whatever Jameis Winston's going to do this week and retroactively put him in place of Will Levis in the one league where I started him last week.
Let's not talk about Will Levis.
Streaming defense for week 15. Jared, I'm going to start it because I still like Arizona. I know they disappointed us last week against Seattle, but I mean, I knew that there was downside risk in that matchup if Seattle played up to the potential that it has. I don't think that there is similar risk this week against the Patriots, who are allowing 3.3 sacks, 1.8 turnovers per game over their past 5. And the Pats are averaging just 19.1 points per game across Drake May's 7 full outings. So we've talked about how well May has played, how much he's helped that offense, but it's still a low floor, low ceiling offense. So you don't really worry about them blowing up the scoreboard and screwing over your team defense. So I'll take Arizona in that one and chase the upside of the sacks and turnovers. And then they have Carolina in week 16. And like a few weeks ago, I thought that was going to be a target. This Carolina team has gotten a lot tougher on team defenses. So I don't know that I'm keeping Arizona for that week, and I'm not counting that as a reason to pick up Arizona this week.
Yeah, I agree with that. And luckily, there's a bunch of good streaming Ds for week 16, which we can get into here. But yeah, I like Arizona this week. I do prefer Washington, against the Saints. It's probably going to be Jake Haener. It's not going to be Derek Carr under center for the Saints. That's all you need to know. Whether it's Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler, good spot for Washington's defense. Saints imply for just 17.75 points. I do want to mention too, just check and see if the Ravens are available in your league. They are 49% owned on Sleeper. They are 15-point favorites against the Giants this week, who have a 14.25 point implied total, maybe the lowest implied total we've seen all year. So, the Ravens are going to blow out the Giants. They're going to get way too many dropbacks out of Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito, and it's an upside spot for the Ravens defense.
Yeah, don't just blindly chase whatever defenses we mentioned here. Make sure you check the rankings, check the free agent finder to see exactly who's available in your league, because there are plenty of times where I'm surprised to find a particular defense available or I didn't think it was going to be an option. Week 16, Jared, who should we be looking ahead and trying to stash for that one?
Yeah, now is definitely the time of the year with the bye weeks behind us. In a lot of cases, you should be stashing 2Ds at this point to make sure you have a defense with a good matchup the rest of the way. The Colts are my favorite because the Colts get the Titans, Will Levis, in week 16, and then they get the Giants in week 17. So you can grab the Colts and have, probably a top 10 defense in our rankings for the final 2 weeks of the season. The Bucks, who we've mentioned also, I like we've said, kind of like them less than we thought we would a month ago here, but they get Dallas and Carolina the last 2 weeks. So, decent spots, even if they're not as good as we thought they were going to be a month ago. And then just as one-off defenses for week 16, the Bengals get the Browns matchup. I think they're in play. And then Atlanta gets the Giants. So the Falcons will probably be, top 10 defense in our week 16 rankings.
Jared, I didn't ask you to take all of the defenses for week 16. I thought you would leave me something.
Trying to get us out of here.
Back to that Carolina point, they have scored 20+ points in 4 of their past 5 games, and they have not turned the ball over more than one time in any of those past 5 games. That, of course, included nearly beating the Eagles in Philadelphia on Sunday. So it's not necessarily a team to avoid, but it's also, to me, not a team to target with defense unless you need to right now. And I also really like that Falcons matchup. I have the Colts down because of the 2-week point that you mentioned there, but that Falcons 1 week against the Giants, the Falcons have been a bad pass rush most of the season. They have 9 sacks over the past 2 weeks, which nearly doubled their season total, now up to 19. So certainly when they get a team like the Giants, nice spot. maybe they're an option this week against the Raiders if you're still reaching for a defense beyond those that we already mentioned.
The last one I have here is I think the Bills are going to get dropped in a lot of leagues with the Lions matchup this week. They're home for New England next week. So again, I prefer the Colts, prefer the Falcons for week 16, but I think the Bills are a lower end spot start option for week 16.
You should be looking ahead for defenses right now. You should be looking ahead to week 17 as well. And our strength of schedule pages for every position are available to help you get not only your defenses set, but get set everywhere, whether it's a potential backup at quarterback, at tight end, just in case somebody gets hurt, whether you're stashing somebody to keep an opponent from getting them in that championship week. Now's a good time to look ahead at that. You can also check out our week 15 waiver articles. And of course, the free agent finder is available to help you navigate the waiver wire in your specific league, no matter how many leagues you're still alive in and playing out the rest of the way. If you've been watching our videos all season and you're not a DS Insider, you can still click the link in the show notes below, give all our team management tools a try for the rest of this year for less than $9. So all we've wanted all season, all we still want these last few weeks is to make Draft Sharks your unfair advantage all the way through the fantasy football playoffs.